All right. I will call the meeting to order and will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we're into approval of the agenda. Did anyone have any items you wanted to remove from the agenda or add? Not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Last chance for discussion.
Point of order, Mr.
What?
Mayor, did we do a roll call?
Oh, we didn't, thank you. You're doing a good job of keeping me on. This is, I think, the third meeting in a row. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Present.
Councilmember Kerr. Here. Councilmember Martin.
Present.
Councilmember Parmet.
Hello.
Councilmember Sullivan. Mayor Riley.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
Great, thank you. Now, going back to the,
Communications to council.
no, we haven't approved the agenda yet.
You're right. I'm doing
I-
it too.
We all are trying to move it along. Then if there aren't objections, then I'll call for a vote. And all those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we have communications to council. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? And they can speak on any topic? Then please step to the microphone, state the name of where you live or work in Keystone, your connection to Keystone, and you have 3 minutes.
Can I just ask a procedural question before this starts? Isn't there a hearing tonight, though?
If you're talking about, no, there isn't a budget hearing tonight. The hearing was last
It's a
week.
hearing on the purchase and lease agreement.
Oh, yeah, there is on that.
Okay, so my question is, should I wait to have my comments? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anyone online who would like to speak?
No.
All right. With that, I'll close communications council and we move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Next item is the budget, and I'll turn it over to the town manager and the finance director. Mr. Town Manager, are you on board?
Town manager is not online right now.
Turn it over to the finance director.
All right, so the first one that we have on the agenda is the supplemental budget for 2025 for this year. We have had a few discussions at this at workshops, and then we had the public meeting for that on November 11th. Today is the day for the supplemental budget and appropriations for the fiscal year 2025. The biggest contributors to the supplemental budget is just because we're doing now a transfer from the general fund into the lodging tax fund. So we need to show that transfer. And then in the lodging tax fund, the reason we need the supplemental budget is because that's where we're putting all the public safety expenditures. So they're in one spot. And then the general fund is contributing to that rather than dividing up the expenditures between 2 different funds. It's just a cleaner and a better way to do it. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions or comments that they want to
Any questions? This has been discussed at length in prior meetings, work sessions. So, Councilmember Kerr.
It has indeed been discussed, but I noted that when you sent this out to us, you highlighted in green the council expenses, which are,
This is just the resolution for,
She's talking about the 2025.
supplemental.
All right.
That's,
Yeah,
we're talking about?
And there's a few things that I highlighted in green just because I updated them from the November 11th.
It's a pretty big update.
And, right, and the reason for that update is because the majority of the cost for the Summit Foundation passes when in there. And then also a couple of meetings, like the CML and events went in there as well. So that was just to show that. I believe there was another green one, which,
Well, before you move on,
Mhm.
so under that one, I certainly have no question about the amount, but maybe the line item, because the cast of the CML events are essentially training and education events, and I wonder why we don't put them there on that previous line item.
well, we can certainly put
I
them.
think going out,
under-
it would be more transparent to,
but I would question whether the CML district meeting is a training session.
it certainly is. I went there because I learned about what's coming up in the future.
But it's also a meeting of the towns and they're exchanging information. That's part of our,
But that's not the primary purpose, it's to give us a, well, okay, so you're right. I mean, our participation in the CML, what do you call it, annual meeting, it costs a bit.
Yeah.
And I think we all have embraced that because we're trying to learn our jobs. And I wouldn't argue the point you were just making about the regional meeting, which is just the price of a dinner. And maybe that would be helpful to clarify when we are investing in training and developing our council.
So when,
And this is not a decision that needs to be
Yeah,
made
no.
now, but I wanted to bring
But
attention to it.
yeah, so I'm going to give you some insight on how I code invoices and decide what category they go into. Generally, like for training, basically it's if you, Carol, as a council member, went to a training, that would go under training. But if we're inviting or paying for a whole like CML dinner where other jurisdictions are coming, that's not really a Keystone training per se, because it's for other entities as a whole. So that's why I put it under the expense for town council.
I think we could make those distinctions.
So,
And I'd like to have that conversation in the future. Another one is the medallion program, the Summit Foundation.
mhm.
The town manager was advocated heavily that this was an appropriate employee benefit, and yet it's under with the council dinners. I don't quite understand.
address that first?
Yeah, so that, it's actually in both categories. It's under employee benefit and town council. And that was my understanding of the direction that the council gave the town manager. So that's how I appropriated
That cost had two elements. One was a donation to the Summit Foundation, which is a nonprofit.
Is that what's in here, the
Mhm.
donation? See, but that's part of my problem. I don't know what's in there. And so the point of having individual line items is to allow us to be transparent as to how we're spending the money and to enable us to track over time how we're spending money. So just the fact that I didn't recognize that is a little confusing.
But we discussed it at the last, when
Yeah.
it first came.
But this is the document that carries forward.
So,
Not this document, not the item we're considering tonight.
yeah, and this is just the budget.
Supplemental?
The supplemental is not that budget. The supplemental is the resolution, which is only the top level funds.
And then for transparency, just like when you do the accounts payable, especially now that we have Casella, as you saw, and it'll actually have the account numbers, so you guys will see where they go. And then if you ever want a line item of what goes into what, I can certainly provide that for you.
I think we'll agree to discuss this at a future. The point today is to get these passed. I'm not questioning the amount of money. I am questioning the transparency
But again,
that we're missing the opportunity for.
that budget was just provided as a add-on to it. We're not approving that budget. What we're approving is the funds. That's the purpose of this resolution, I believe.
The appropriation.
Well, I'm looking at a budget that has
But that's,
changes from the 2025 amended and the 2025 supplemental. That's precisely what I'm looking for, because you have clarified that that's a pretty big delta, right? So,
but you identified that as part of the budget report that you provided to us in the work session.
it's also in the supplemental.
It's not in what we're approving. We are not approving that. All we're approving is the funds levels.
Based on this.
That's-
you're saying-
That is information.
It's
that
informational,
supported
not
this.
relevant.
Yeah, so it's
That's
just the,
information for council.
it's the appropriations that we are approving today for both the supplemental 2025 and the 26 later on.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. I do agree with the councilwoman, about the transparency, but I would like to highlight that I think the finance team does a fantastic job compared to, I've looked at other budgets from the county and towns, and I think that the fact that they're called out and specifies what those items are going to is really important. But I do agree moving forward, and again, we're not gonna necessarily parse this out right now, but I do agree with the councilwoman, moving forward, we might look at, and again, I don't want to dive into it too deep, but the community support fund, why when we have put the Summit Foundations under the community support, because like that's, but again, I don't quite frankly care enough to argue that point, but I do agree with the councilwoman that it might be something we look into for the future. I again think you do a fantastic job with the notes, and that's enough for me.
And just to clarify too, the reason I didn't put it under the community support is because for the 26 budget, we changed that to community grants. And this isn't a grant, so that's why I put it in there, is just so when we move forward, each year is more comparable.
I appreciate the idea of the comparisons, and that's important. And as Councilmember Hagenow says, we appreciate what you've done. I trust the numbers. And if this is informational for us, then I would like the information in the future to take the 5 steps you've already invested here and take one more step in the future.
If you look at the information that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be, if you look at the accounts payable list that we had in this report, in our work, or in fact, it's in the council packet, that lays out the accounts that each of the individual expenditures were put on in the last period. So I think that's the information you're really looking at.
I'm not requesting or requiring any changes. I just want to bring
No.
attention to.
I'm just pointing out that
Distinctions,
information is available
transparency.
to the council.
And now that we're on, we have Casella, we have all the finances in-house, it'll be easier for transparency because the account numbers will actually be on the budget, they'll actually be on the financials, and they're on the AP report. So it'll be easy for cross-referencing.
Okay. And I think that's the key.
Mhm.
To say you could go research is not really what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. So I appreciate
And on top of that, anytime that you guys want additional
I know,
information.
you've been great.
I'm available by phone, I'm available by email. It's easy to produce. But yeah, if you wanted a printout of what goes into each line item, your budget packet is going to be quite large.
Move to
So we've moved to approve the budget,
a supplemental budget
supplemental.
as presented.
You You moved to approve resolution 2025-41.
That is exactly what I meant to say. Thank you so much for that.
And has that been, and that has been seconded? Member, it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving resolution 2025-41, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. The next item is the 2026 budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to, again, the finance director.
All right, sounds good. So the same as the 2025 supplemental budget, the 2026 budget has been presented in several workshops and discussed at length, and also the public hearing was on November 11th. And so this is, we are required by state law to adopt a budget, appropriations, and certify the mill levy by December 15th, and today's December 9th, so we'll get it right in the nick of time for approval so we can operate for next year. Now, with that being said, priorities change, information changes. So anytime during the 26th year, if council decides that something needs to change or we need to appropriate additional funds, we can always do another supplemental budget for 26. So this isn't set in stone. We still can change it if the full council agrees. So also on the 2026 budget that's changed from the December 11th meeting is I have updated some of the figures to correspond with the lease purchase for the building based on what it said. So I highlighted those in green as well. So the resolutions that need to be approved tonight so we can operate in 2026 as we have the annual budget. So it's approving the annual budget. The next one is the appropriations for the funds, and then the certification for the mill levy. And as you will see on the certification for the mill levy, we do not put any mills on our property taxes, so we don't levy any property taxes in the town of Keystone.
Is there any questions? Councilmember Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick edit, and I don't think we need to adjust the document, but on the bottom of every page, it says page 5 of blank, page 4 of blank, etc. So that might just be something to edit. And then my question related to the mill level, we as a town cannot levy new taxes, right, without going to the voters. How does the mill relate to that? If we were to decide to do a mill, would we have to go to the voters?
Mhm.
So basically, even if we wanted to do a mill, we couldn't.
Unless we went to the voters.
Okay, good.
Does that mean it has to have already happened or, okay,
Yeah. So the first step with levying a mill is it has to go to the voters. The voters have to approve it. And once they approve it, then we can establish a bill of the property taxes.
So in reading the document, it was talking about to balance our budget, we need to add X mill, right?
Mhm.
It kind of is a little too late, right? In my opinion, if we're trying to balance a budget and we're trying to put a mill in there. So is there any concern with how we have it set up now? Like, do we try to proactively go to the voters and get approval to do this in the future? Like,
No, and
Is there
just,
a risk?
yeah,
Is
just to
there-
clarify, that language is set out by the state. You actually have to have that language in your mill levy.
Okay.
So it doesn't have anything really honestly to do with per se balancing the budget. We do that anyhow.
so this would actually be saying to whoever reads this, that we went to the voters, got their approval in order to balance the budget. That's
No,
just- No?
No, what it's really saying, this is sent to the county clerk.
Yeah.
And it tells them, this is the amount of mill levy you need to you need to collect for the town of Keystone.
I understand, but I think my fellow council members' question is related to the timeline. That in this language that you say the state requires, it is saying, oh, we had to come up with this in order to balance
Yeah,
it. But it would have already gone to the voters to say that, right?
Yeah, well, if we would have gone to the voters to
Right.
get approval of the mill levy, of the ability to establish a mill levy for taxes. Whether it was, if the states just assumed you needed it to balance your budget.
Right. Well, and it's also too, we're fortunate enough that right now we're operating without property tax money. So we're very fortunate where municipalities, they need that property tax money to be able to balance their budgets. Plus it gives right now, based on our like sales tax revenue, that's our budget. So if we wanted to do more, then that's when we would ask the voters for more money for the property taxes. But currently, we don't have that direction from council.
And Mayor, can I just add a little more? So typically when municipalities go to the voters to propose a property tax, you ask a question of the voters, you have to comply with Tabor. So it has to be done in November or in April to ask the voters. And you ask an up to mill amount. So you say that, say, for example, you would levy property tax up to 15 mills.
Okay.
And then the assessor sends to the town the property valuation. They have to send it by a certain date. And so you figure out what that property tax valuation is. And then you can change your mills that you assess every year, essentially, depending on what you need for your budget. So if you said up to 15 mills, in 1 year, you could only assess, you could decide, we only need 12 mills. So we're going to assess 12 mills for this particular year. So then you pass your resolution, and that goes to the assessor so they know what to charge
What we
for
finally
property
decided
tax.
on.
Yes.
Very helpful.
Again, we're in discussion of the budget right now. The resolution to approve the budget, not the other portions that we just discussed. So again, I've had a motion to approve the budget. Have I had a motion to
I
approve the
don't believe you
budget?
have, Mr.
No,
Mayor, but I would gladly make that.
Is there, you would like to make that?
I would move to approve resolution 2025-42.
And that's a resolution of the town council, town of Keystone, summarizing expenditures and revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Keystone, Colorado for calendar year beginning the first day of January 2026 and ending the last day of December 2026.
I'll second that.
It's been moved to second. Now, any discussion?
I would just like to thank the staff for the amount of time in this budget and the effort that's been put into it. Again, I've reviewed other budgets across the county and I really appreciate the detail and work that's been in there. So thank you.
Yeah. One comment I'd like to make is I appreciated the verbiage that was included with the budget that we hadn't seen before. I thought that was very helpful and adds to transparency. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councilmember Kerr.
At the risk of being redundant, I wanted to point it out, I've come to you for additional explanations multiple times. We have seen this for months and you have explained it. So I appreciate that. And further, I do believe that budget narrative captures the council's priorities on behalf of the town. So.
It's, yeah, and the budget message is something that comes with the approval of the budget because it would be very difficult for me to keep changing that with every revision of the budget. So that's why you guys get to see it at last moment.
Again, any further discussion? In that case, I'll call the question. In this case, since it's the budget, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hagenow,
Approve.
Councilmember Kerr,
Approve.
Councilmember Martin,
Approve.
Councilmember Parmet,
Yep.
Mayor Riley.
Approve.
There's 6 votes to approve.
Thank you. Next item is resolution 2025-43. A resolution of the Town Council, Town of Keystone, Colorado, appropriating sums of money for the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth for the Town of Keystone, Colorado for the budget for the 2026 budget year. This Finance Director.
Yes, so this is our appropriations for the year that's required, again, by law for us to be able to expend money in the 2026 year. And you will see that each fund is laid out in each category, operating, capital outlay, debt service, and transfers for each fund if they so warrant the appropriation.
Any questions? One question, am I correct that what we're approving is the maximum amount that can be expended from any of those funds? And that's all we're approving by this. And that it's the maximum amount that we're approving for each of those funds. And as long we would not need to do another supplemental unless we were going to go over those amounts.
That's correct. Yeah, so we can, so by appropriating these funds, we are not allowed to spend more than what we appropriate, but we can spend less. And so generally when we do the budgets, you know, we round up to make sure that we have ample funds to operate for the year. And our budget is very conservative in both revenues and expenditures. So if council decides to switch priorities or do a bigger project or something like that, we will have to do a supplemental budget. But this right now conveys everything that's we've talked to over the several workshops in the last few months.
Councilmember Kerr.
You've clarified that we can spend less, but we can also spend differently within those,
Within like the operating,
within the funds.
within like the operating for the general fund or the capital outlay. But if you go over in capital outlay, you'd have to do a supplemental budget.
Okay,
Right.
right.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think something that's been front of mind for a lot of people in county is the potential impact of a turn or a negative turn in the lodging and hospitality industry. And I know you mentioned our revenues are being conservative, but I mean, Breckenridge, for example, just like where I work, right, we're looking at almost an 18% expected downturn, right? So that would obviously directly correlate to less revenue. Could you explain, and I know we've talked about this many months ago, but those conservative numbers that we're using for the revenues, how did that take into account the anticipated or potential for a downturn in visitors and then by correlation a downturn in revenues?
Yeah, certainly. So as we discussed in the workshop too, even though we for September and October sales tax revenue and lodging tax, we are seeing a downturn in that. In our buffer, we've budgeted flat for our revenues for this year based on, or for 26 based on this year. And our buffer is the Kindred Hotel. Because that's going to bring in additional revenues. We just don't know how much. And so basically our thought is whatever additional revenues that the Kindred Hotel and restaurants and gift shops bring in, that'll help mitigate any downturn that we have. We will also be watching those sales tax numbers very closely each time, and the lodging tax revenues each month when they do come in, just to gauge. Our first quarter is our biggest month, so that'll be the tell-all to know if we're on track or not. We're fortunate that we're small enough and that we can pivot quickly, and there's expenditures in our budget that if we do see a significant downturn in our revenue numbers, we can cut out some of those expenditures. Plus, just since you mentioned like Breckenridge and their downturn, would you say 19% or something like that?
It's like 17.8 or something.
Yeah, so roughly on there. Keep in mind that post-COVID, I don't know, their numbers increased post-COVID, like from 2020, I think, till last year, increased anywhere from like 50 to 60%. And so their downturn of 16%, I think is expected.
Sure. And it sounds like a lot of our eggs, if you will, are in the Kindred basket. What was your anticipated opening date for Kindred when we were basing this? Like, are you anticipating them open?
So Councilmember Hagenau, if I can weigh in, our budget is for the entirety of the year. So any income from Kindred that we get throughout the year is above and beyond what we've in any way budgeted for. Since we don't have that number, we feel it's, given the size and scope of Kindred, we feel it's a safe buffer whenever they open. We anticipated an early season opening. And I really want to stress what Heike had just said before. The way our spending is outlined and set up, if we do see a dramatic financial negative impact, Kindred never opens up, our taxes are down 18%. We still have a lot of expenditures that don't happen until later in the year that we can hold off on, that we can put off. And there's a significant safety cushion that we can use in our budget.
Okay. Thank you both.
Other questions? It's been moved and seconded. And one last chance, any further discussion? In that case, wait a minute, do I have a motion and a second? All right, I do need a motion.
And just to clarify, this is for resolution 2543.
2543.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve resolution number 2025-43, a resolution appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the town of Keystone, Colorado for the 2026 budget year.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Again, last chance for discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Motion is carried. The next item is resolution 2025-44, a resolution of the town council of the town of Keystone, Colorado, levying property taxes for the year 2026 to help defray the cost of government for the town of Keystone, Colorado for the 2026 budget year. I think we've had a significant discussion of this resolution already. Anything further to say?
To me, there's nothing really further to say on this, but it looks like at least one council member has a question.
All right, Councilmember Kerr.
No, I have a proposal to move, make a motion. You ready? I move that we approve resolution 2025-44. I'd like to say ditto what the mayor said, but I'll do my part. It's a resolution of the town council of the town of Keystone, Colorado, levying property taxes for the year 2026 to help defray the cost of government for the town of Keystone, Colorado for the 2026 budget year.
All right. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now discussion. Any discussion?
Only comment I'll say is that while the title indicates that we're levying a property tax, we are in fact voting to not levy a property tax.
Correct.
So just in case anyone's listening back on this and doesn't have that context.
Valid.
Yeah, and further, this resolution is required by state law in exactly the form that is stated. So we have no choice,
Doing the right thing.
even though we're home rule. So with that, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving resolution of 2025 -44, please raise your hands. Opposed? Motion's carried. The next item is ordinance 2025-0-19 regarding the purchase of the, regarding writing candidates for cancellation of elections. And with that, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Town Council. My name is Madeline Cielu. I'm the town clerk. This evening, we're looking at ordinance 2025-0-19 regarding write-in candidates and the cancellation of elections. This does two things. First, it establishes a procedure for handling write-in candidates and establishes a timeline for which write-in candidates must notify the clerk by filing an affidavit of intent that they intend to be a write-in candidate. Establishing this timeline, in addition to just making sure that our write-in procedures are outlined, also allows the town the opportunity to potentially cancel an election if the number of candidates is equal to the number of open positions.
Excuse me, I think I failed to state that the public hearing is open.
Okay. And if there are the same number of candidates as the number of open positions on the ballot, we would have the opportunity to potentially consider the cancellation of an election. If this ordinance passed, it does not mean that an election would automatically be canceled under these circumstances. It just gives the town council the opportunity to do so. And the town council at that time would still need to pass a resolution. In addition to this, it does also outline procedures to ensure that staggered terms are maintained. And the procedures are that the town clerk would host a public lot drawing to determine the terms of the candidates. If an election was canceled and there were 4 or more positions on the ballot, because that is the scenario that we would be in 2026 and potentially future years where we would have staggered terms on the ballot.
Before I open the floor to questions for the clerk, the procedures we're going to follow in the hearing is first to hear the report, which we've just done. We'll take public comment. We will take public comment. Then after public comment, we will be able to engage in questions from the council. Council will engage in questions. At the completion of the questions, then we will, and after we have received the questions, we will at that point go into discussion for consideration. We'll close the public hearing and go in for discussion for approval. So with that, first, does anyone have any questions of the town manager or clerk? All right, now I'll open the floor to public comment. And again, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Neither the council nor the town manager will answer questions or respond to comments during the public hearing. And following the public comment, council members will be afforded the opportunity to ask additional questions of staff. And then the public hearing will be closed and we will deliberate. With that, the floor is open for public comment. Does anyone wish to speak? Please.
Is this for 2025-020?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Not there yet.
019 is where we're at.
We're at 019. So with that, does anyone online wish to speak?
No.
With that, I will turn this back over and to council. Any questions council would like to ask additional? All right, at this point, I'll close the public hearing and we're open for discussion. Councilmember Hagenau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we've all seen this and talked about this before in nauseam, so I don't want to go on too far, but again, I just want to emphasize what the clerk has mentioned, that this does not require us to cancel an election. It merely gives us the opportunity to do that. And so this is just a tool in our toolbox, if you will. So I think that that's a very important thing to call out and was important for us when we first talked about this at length.
Any other discussion? With no further discussion, is there a motion? Councilmember Kerr.
The right thing. Hold on. Jump the gun there. I move that we approve ordinance number 2025-0-19, an ordinance of Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, regarding write-in candidates and the cancellation of elections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Debate? Hearing none, I'll call the question, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hagenau.
Approve.
Councilmember Kerr.
Approve.
Councilmember Martin.
Approve.
Councilmember Parmet.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen.
Approve.
Mayor Riley.
Approve.
There are 6 votes to approve.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to ordinance 2025-0-20. And with that, I'll ask the clerk to please read the title into the record.
Ordinance 2025-0-20, an ordinance of Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, approving a lease and purchase agreement for that certain real property known as 1628 Saints John Road, Keystone, Colorado.
And again, at this public hearing, the procedures we'll follow are the ones we should have followed for the last ordinance, of which we'll have a presentation by the town manager, followed by questions of the staff. Then we'll open the floor to comments by the public. And following those comments, we will then afford the council another opportunity to ask questions. And then we'll close the public hearing. And after that, we will deliberate. And with that, could I have an introductory presentation, please?
Yes, so this is our second reading of the ordinance to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement with the Keystone Center for the purchase of the building that we're in, and the approximately 6 acres of land that comes with us. The total cost of the building and land is $4.1 million. It will be paid over 6 years. Due to state law, this is a non-binding agreement for us. If at any year we do not allocate. Sorry, Jennifer, did you have something to say?
No.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard something. If we don't allocate the funds, then we don't go through with it. We don't get our money back either. But the way Colorado law is, we cannot commit without a vote of the people for any period longer than 1 year. I guess, are there any questions from the council about any of the specifics in the lease purchase agreement? And actually, I'll let Jennifer, if you have anything to say, please jump in and let us know.
Council have any questions? Any questions? All right. With that, I will now I'll allow for public comment. And again, now you have the opportunity to please step forward, state your name, where you live or work, or your connection to Keystone. If there's more than one, line up behind the podium. When it's your turn to speak, please again, state your name and where you live or work. And you have 3 minutes for your comments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Maureen.
Good evening. I am Maureen Barrett, Keystone property owner and licensed consulting engineer, and the head of an 80 Keystone owner nonprofit dedicated to improving representation for homeowners in Keystone. I ask that the council vote no on ordinance 2025-020. The lease and purchase and agreement in its current form, I feel, is a $4.1 million purchase price that is a massive commitment of residents and property owners' taxpayer dollars, representing about 3/4 of an entire year's budget, as I don't know exactly what the total budget is this year. The terms are massively worrying. $47,000 per month for an entire first year, $43,000 per month for an additional 5 years. So all sounds very crippling. And is there even an appraisal of the building? The terms of purchase seem quite designed to benefit the owner rather than the town. Who is the actual underwriter here? I believe that if it is in fact the owner as an underwriter, or the seller as an underwriter, then the arrangement seems to benefit their tax scheduling. As for investment properties, the seller as the underwriter can limit what is subject to taxes for each of the 6 years. But it seems to me that it would benefit the town to have a longer amortization period for sure. The terms were put together, I feel, within closed-door executive session, mostly out of public view. For instance, what about the non-monetary benefits that the seller has gained at taxpayer expense? I believe it is the case, we all agree, that the seller's HOA received the road maintenance and snow climb services contract at about the same time the terms of this agreement were moving forward. Yet roads that are far better meet the town's published criteria for maintenance and plowing still go unserved. Roads with town bus service that serve many, specifically 150 residents, not just 15, still go unserved. Why not extend plowing services to all Keystone residents as a condition of approval for this agreement? This seems like a very large building for 1,100, a town of 1,100 population total. Why not just rent this building? In the meantime, you can assess exactly what the town's needs are for space. Please do not be tempted into committing a massively expensive purchase because of the prospect of affordable housing. With so much on this town's plate, why take on the headaches of a development project? Please allow yourself and town residents the space and time without pressure to evaluate all potential options for purchasing a town center. Please vote no on the proposed lease and purchase agreement unless it is modified to include among leasing terms. And also please extend plowing services to all Keystone residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone have questions? Any further public comment? Anyone have further questions of staff or the town manager or the attorney? Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the attorney or town manager be able to talk about the appraisal process and how the valuation was derived?
Yeah, we hired a professional appraiser to give us an appraised value of the property and the land. They appraised it actually at full commercial value. They used 3 different techniques to appraise it. Commercial value, building replacement, and I can't quite remember the third one. The point is the lowest appraised value that came out of the three types was just over 4.1 million. So we're basically receiving this building from a nonprofit. We're not purchasing this from an individual. We're purchasing it from the Keystone Center, which is a nonprofit organization whose sole location in Keystone is currently the building that you're in right now. But the lowest appraised value was just over the purchase price that we're paying for this. That appraised value would have also taken into account a one-time payment of 4.1 million. If we had to take a mortgage or a loan or some issue like that, we would be paying interest on the, or a bond. We would be paying interest on the majority of that debt during the period we were closing the financing on this. In this case, with the lease purchase agreement, we're not paying any interest on the $4.1 million assessed value.
One question.
Or appraised.
Does the owner of the building accrue any tax benefits as a result of this?
I can't answer 100% because I don't know the books of the Keystone Center, but as a nonprofit, I cannot see where they would somehow sever a tax benefit due to the purchase of this. Maybe our attorney has a different answer.
I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not aware.
They're a
that there's-
501c3.
Yeah.
Another question of, there was a discussion of a $42,000 a month payment. Is that a rent or is that a principal buy down?
That is the buy down for the down payment.
So that's not going to rent. That's buy down of principal
Right.
of that 4.1 million of sale price.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
One more. Okay.
Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you. Could the town attorney and or manager talk about the process that we have used to evaluate which roads would receive maintenance and or snow plowing, and specifically any recent adjustments to our understanding of what that process is?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, first I want to make it clear that selection of roads to be plowed has absolutely nothing to do with this agreement with the Keystone Center, except for the fact that because it's town hall, the town last year took over maintenance responsibility for Saint John Road, so that town hall could be accessed. This year we picked up some additional roads that we are doing maintenance of. We took that additional responsibility on when we discovered through pretty exhaustive title search by our attorney that there were several roads that were actually town-owned right-of-ways. They were town roads that were being privately maintained. And on the advice of our attorney, we took on those roads. West Hills subdivision, I can't remember the name of the road. North Fork, yeah. And North Fork Road and Meisel Drive were all actually town-owned roads that were being privately maintained. On the advice of our attorney, the town took maintenance responsibility for those roads.
Are there any roads in the town of Keystone that are town-owned roads with town right-of-ways that we are not maintaining?
Not that I know of, not at this time, no. The only roads that the town is not maintaining are privately owned right-of-ways at this point. I know town council's expressed interest in creating a process to take responsibility for these roads in the future. But at this point, the town needs to take responsibility for town-owned roads. And we've taken a few roads because they serve a crucial transportation segment in our community. That's it at this point.
Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, that exhaustive title search that you talked about, do you believe that there's any further roads that through future title searches we could determine are actually our responsibility? Or do you think that this title search kind of hit the three that might have not been understood as our responsibility previously?
I am, I can never be 100% sure, but I am fairly confident that at this point, we've identified all the town roads and right-of-ways.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, then I will close the public hearing. And at that point, open the floor for deliberations from council. Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you. I think that a lot of work has gone into this, and I'm really excited to see this moving along. I believe that we're getting a great deal for a town that doesn't have a lot of land. We are getting 6 acres, right? Something that we can use to develop into something beneficial for the town, right? Whether that's parkland, whether that's affordable housing, whether that's any sort of other things that we do. But I'm really excited to see the potential that we could use this land for. I'm excited to have a home base that would be ours. And quite frankly, $4 million building is pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things, especially when you look at what other towns are building, a parking garage in a neighboring town that was over $20 million, right? And it doesn't even have any indoor space. So the fact that we're getting kind of ready to go town hall and something that can serve as a community center, community meeting space, or whatever ends up being utilized in these public areas, I'm really excited for. And I think that our staff has done a fantastic job, but I also think that the Keystone Center has been very gracious in their negotiation with us. So want to thank them as well. And I'm excited to see what the potential for the space is and the land around it.
Councilmember Permit.
I would say the whole process was quite a learning experience for me, coming from the healthcare fields and not commercial real estate. And I was impressed by the amount of effort and diligence that went into this process. It's what was due to the people. And I think it's really important that we, the people, as the town, own this house of the people, or will, rather than being tenants in it, because there is nowhere else for us to be, that we aren't permanent tenants. And if this space was then sold, because clearly the nonprofit that owns it is ready to exit it, it could go to any other number of things that would not necessarily be so clearly in the public interest as what the town can do for its people with this place in this space.
Comments? I'd also like to point out, as part of the sale, when you look at the appraised price of the building was about $2.9 million. The appraised price of the land was $1 million. But the reason that the land was so undervalued is because it's restricted to nonprofit or governmental use. If this land had been for residential use, you're probably talking somewhere between $10 and $20 million for the land alone. So the opportunity that we have to have a public space for our community, to have a base of community support activities, whether it be a park or some other thing in that area, is tremendous. And this purchase allows us that opportunity. And further, it allows us an opportunity for workforce housing as we look into the future. So I see it as extremely positive for this town to be able to have this opportunity. And we're fortunate that the Keystone Center was incentivized to hold off on listing this property for sale to other users because the founder of the Keystone Center was dedicated to this town and wanted very much to have this facility supporting the overall community. And the Keystone Center Board recognized that desire of the founder who is deceased and held off on putting this property back on the market after it had already been listed and sold with a letter of agreement at $4.1 million. In fact, I believe it was $5 million, Mr. Town Manager. The Peak School cost?
I believe it was even higher than that. It was at least 4.9, if not somewhere in the 5 million price range. I can't recall off the top of my head.
So, and they specifically held off on putting this property back on the market after that deal fell through because they felt it was in the town founder or the Keystone Center founders. That was what his wish would have been, and he was the one who caused the building to be built. So I think we're very fortunate. We had a partner that we were able to work with. The terms, I believe, are very favorable to the town. In the fact that we're paying rent for this space of $49,000 a year. If you were to go out in the commercial market and try to rent that space, you couldn't touch it for $200,000 just for the space we're using. I went through that analysis during the incorporation process. So this is, I believe it's a very beneficial deal for opportunity for us, and that's why I'm going to be voting yes. Councilmember Kerr.
I think that was a very good rundown on the wisdom of using the money this way. And I want to clarify that none of these monies are property taxes. Am I accurate in making that statement?
Yes, that's.
We are, this town is funded with sales tax, and so too will this be. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? And did I get a motion? Councilmember Hagenel.
I would move to approve ordinance 2025-0-20, approving a lease and purchase agreement for 1628 St. John's Road, Keystone, Colorado.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any debate or further discussion? I'll call the question and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Kerr.
Approve.
Councilmember Martin.
Approve.
Councilmember Parmet.
Aye.
Councilmember Allen.
Approve.
Councilmember Hagenau.
Approve.
Mayor Riley.
Approve.
There's 6 votes to approve.
Thank you. The next item is Resolution 2025-38, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone approving an intergovernmental agreement with Blue River, Breckenridge, Dillon, and Silverthorne for election services. And I'll turn it over to the town clerk.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Resolution 2025-38 is in regards to an intergovernmental agreement with other municipalities in Summit County for shared election equipment services. In previous years, the Summit County Clerk and Recorder has allowed municipalities within Summit County to utilize their tabulation equipment for conducting municipal elections. All of the municipal elections in Summit County currently happen in April of even numbered years, so we're all on the same schedule. And the Summit County Clerk was able to allow us to utilize their tabulation equipment that they own. In 2026, they have a primary in June, which just creates some logistical challenges for them in allowing us to utilize that equipment. And so they have notified us that we will not be able to do that in 2026. Based off of this, the municipalities in Summit County and their respective clerks have looked at potential options for cost sharing in order to lease the election tabulation equipment. We received quotes from 3 different companies, including Dominion, which is now operating as Liberty Vote, Election Supplies and Systems, also known as ES&S, and Clear Ballot. Based off of the evaluation of those quotes, we determined that Clear Ballot provided the most effective proposal and is fully certified by the Colorado Secretary of State. We did talk to other municipalities in the state that have utilized Clear Ballot for their regular municipal elections, and they have had positive results with them. In November of this year, the town clerks have met with one another to review and refine terms of an intergovernmental agreement related to the sharing of this equipment. And this equipment will be leased directly by the town of Breckenridge, and they will enter into an agreement with Clear Ballot directly. And they're entering into that master contract with Clear Ballot. They're going to house the equipment, and they're going to make the initial payments in full for that vendor contract. And they're providing for the use of that election equipment and software, but that does not mean that the town of Breckenridge will be completing the tabulation of our ballots. And this is clearly outlined in the IGA. All of the towns on this agreement have reviewed the proposed IGA. We've also reviewed the security measures that the town of Breckenridge has in place for the secure storage of the tabulation equipment. And each town clerk will still be responsible for their respective municipality and will retain all of their rights and responsibilities as their designated election official. This does create a significant cost savings for the town if we were to lease our own equipment through Clear Ballot. We're saving at least $8,000. Alternatively, we could utilize a hand count. But we think while that's initially less expensive, there are significant concerns related to efficiency and accuracy, and it increases the risk of human error.
Any questions? No questions? I have a motion. Councilmember Kerr.
I move to approve Resolution 2025-38, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, approving an IGA with Blue River, Breckenridge, Dillon, Silverthorne for election services.
Is there a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate or discussion? Councilmember Kerr.
I just want to say I'm proud that, not my pride, but I am impressed that our town clerk has an effective working relationship with fellow town clerks. And this is a collaborative solution that was cost effective, cooperative, efficient, and effective. And thank you for doing this and the other work you're doing with the other towns on this elections.
Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry if I missed it, but why is Frisco not on this?
Frisco is conducting a hand count.
Thank you.
They share whether that was for monetary reasons or others, or?
I believe that it was somewhat related to monetary reasons. I will note also that the town clerk in Frisco has significant experience working for the county as the chief deputy clerk for the county previously. So she's very experienced with managing hand counts as well and having some of that experience. I will note that conducting a hand count requires talented election judges, and the pool of experienced hand counters are likely already hired by the town of Frisco.
Well, I would disagree. As we went through the incorporation process, we do have a very experienced group of hand counters in the town, and they've been trained by the Colorado Municipal League chief clerk trainer on elections as well. However, that said,
Yes.
This is a correction. I believe that your approach, collaborative approach that you and the other clerks came up with is an excellent approach. And the costs for this are being allocated based on the number of registered voters, not on an equal share. And as a result, the cost for this is what, $3,600 for the overall election. And when you look at how those costs are allocated and the other costs that are involved in the election, there's other costs in the election that are also defrayed because we're paying for this. As someone who funded 3 elections, I understand a little bit about the cost elements associated with that. So again, along with the Council Member Kerr, I would like to applaud the effort that you've made. It's going to make the processing and completion of this election much simpler and much less of a burden on the staff. And we have a very minimum staff.
With no change to my support, I would ask that if Briscoe is willing to share their lessons learned after this, that you share those with us. That would be interesting going forward.
Is there any other discussion? Because we've had a move in second. Any other question? Then I'll call the question. And all those in favor of approving resolution 2025-38, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Motion is carried. The next item is resolution 2025-39, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, authorizing the conduct of a mail ballot election for the Town of Keystone's regular municipal election on April 7th, 2026. And again, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
All right, resolution 2025-39 authorizes us to conduct a mail ballot election for the next regular municipal election. Additionally, it allows, it designates the clerk as the designated election official and outlines the procedures that will follow from Title 31 in relation to the mail ballot election.
Is there any questions? Councilmember Kerr.
If Colorado statutes already expressly authorizes this, does it also specify that we must vote on that?
We're specifically declaring that that we are going to do a mail ballot election versus an in-person.
Communicative reasons mostly. Okay, thanks.
Am I correct that it also means that we will not have polling stations in this building on election day?
Correct.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hagan.
How do we feel that a town like Keystone doesn't have a post office, doesn't have reliable mail service across the entire town, should rely only on a mail election?
So just because we're not having a voter service center, it doesn't mean that we won't be allowing people to come in and request a ballot from us and provide them with that ballot and then be able to vote that ballot. It just changes the technical logistics of the voter precinct versus having folks request that mail ballot from us in person.
Will they be able to request that mail ballot and receive it at the same time?
Yes.
Could you explain thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor. Could you explain the process for somebody who lives in the town of Keystone, who might not have mail service at their residence, what they would do on the day of election or before to be able to have their voice heard?
They would just need to come into town hall and request that ballot. We would be able to issue that ballot. They would then be able to fill out the ballot and drop it in the ballot drop box in town hall. Yeah.
if someone receives a ballot in the mail and fills that ballot out, will they be able to drop it off at the town hall and put it in the ballot box?
Yes.
Any other questions?
So how is that going to be publicized, or how are we going to let people know about this process? Because that may be, I mean, it was a great point that mail service in a lot of places don't have that. So this may be different for a lot of residents. Do we have a way that we're going to be able to market that or advertise to people? This is.
So all of the secrecy sleeves on the ballots come with instructions about how you can return your ballot. So if you have received your ballot, you would get those instructions. And if for some reason you aren't able to drop it in the mail, you would be able to see that on that ballot and say, okay, I can bring this into town hall. Additionally, we would just do the normal outreach procedures that we utilize. And I would say this isn't abnormal. Folks who live in Keystone are familiar with the fact that we have mail ballot elections in the state of Colorado because there are other mail ballot elections that they may have participated in. But the town will also advertise that we're having municipal elections all throughout next spring.
So if I may follow up on the council member's question, I completely understand the privacy sleeves having instructions on what to drop off. And I don't want to put words in the council member's mouth, but my understanding of the question was before you even get the ballot, right? How do I, as somebody who lives in an area that doesn't get mail service, know to come to the town hall to get that, regardless of how to process the ballot after you get it, right? Like I think the issue is that first step, right? Getting people involved who might not get a ballot at all in the mail.
If I may weigh in, when you register to vote, you're required to give a mailing address. It's just part of the entire registration in the state of Colorado. So if you are a registered voter, you do have a place where you get mail. You will receive that ballot. As we advertise the election, if you don't receive that ballot in the mail, then you would do what it's kind of common sense. You ask the town, why haven't I received a ballot? I guess at that point, it's impossible for us to know of anyone who, and like I said, everyone who's registered has a mailing address. So if they somehow got registered without a mailing address, there'd be no way for us to reach out to them anyways.
So what does the alternative look like if we wanted a voter service center and actually have voting take place in this building on election day? What would that even look like?
You will have voting on election day in this building. The person comes in, they ask for a ballot, they fill out the ballot, drop it in the ballot box.
Yes. Okay. Understood. The alternative to the mail ballot election. What does that alternative look like?
We don't have an alternative to a mail ballot election. We have to have a mail ballot election, I believe, don't we?
No.
No, we don't. All right.
You receive, typically what happens, you sign in at the poll book. So it involves more staff because you sign in at the poll book. You're like, okay, this is my name. This is my registration. If you're not registered, you would need to go through the registration process. Then you receive a ticket from the poll book. You go to the next station. You drop off that ticket with the election judges who are sitting at that table. Those election judges hand you the ballot. You go to a voting booth. Then after you go to the voting booth, you return your ballot to another area. So it requires additional staffing and a different ballot box setup than the ballot box with the secrecy sleeves and the envelopes in the same way.
Doesn't it all have to be done that one day?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And will this allow people to come in, as soon as ballots are released, they may come in to the town hall. And if they've received a ballot, they can vote that ballot. Or if they haven't received a ballot, they can request a ballot. They can fill it out at the one time and drop it off.
And I think that procedure, Mr. Mayor, that you just described is very, very important because being, yeah, I think that, so I think carefully looking into how, whether it's even just putting that on the website. Hey, if you haven't received your ballot by this day, or you can always come in, just to get as much participation as possible. So people.
Councilmember Martin.
As someone who worked on the election commission for the town and corporation, it was a lot of people and hundreds of hours of time volunteered to undertake the way that election process underwent. To the concerns with the post office, one of my jobs was to go to the post office, and we had a PO box and to pick up the ballots. The post office assured us that election ballots receive first priority in the mail sorting. So it's not something that's left to the end of the day. So we did receive quite a few ballots through that box we had at the post office. I think what might be beneficial, because we had an awful lot of ballots that were undeliverable, is that maybe on our website banner, if we get to election, that we encourage people to update their voter registration record and make sure that they are registered. We do have a correct and current address, because like I say, there was an awful lot of ballots returned that were undeliverable by the post office.
And that's the crux of the concern.
Yeah, one of our, I've looked at the undeliverable ballots, and largely what they are people who have moved from Keystone to another location. There's no requirement to deregister when you leave. And so those ballots went out and they got then kicked back to us. There were also issues were somewhat like 130 or 140 registered voters in Tenderfoot and Sunrise. And a majority of those fell into that category that they were returned. Many of those had the mailing addresses actually out of state as well. So it's a particular problem that we have in Keystone because of our transient population, and particularly with the desire to get more involved, the transient community that's living in the town. So
Couldn't agree more.
will you be, when someone comes in prior to the election to request a ballot, could you explain where they will go and to get that ballot and how they can get it and vote it?
Yes, assuming all of our space constraints are the same, they would come to, probably my office or Gabby's office and make that request to us. We would have the voter drop box, the ballot drop box right outside of our offices, because someone needs to be able to watch that box. So it's not something that we would be able to have, at this front station unless we were to change where we're sitting as a staff during that time period, which is a possibility, at least in the week leading up to election, if we wanted to make it more convenient for folks. But they would just come over to one of our offices. We would have a procedure for checking out those ballots and ensuring that they haven't already turned in a ballot and providing them with the ballot. And then they would have the option to either vote it right then and there or take it back with them, do their research, and then come back and drop it off later.
What is that? The mayor mentioned our transient population in Sunrise and Tenderfoot, I believe, were the two examples. What if I'm a resident of Tenderfoot? What do I need to bring with me or provide to the staff during that process that you mentioned?
So ideally, you would already be registered to vote prior to coming to check in with us. So because the process for voter registration is managed through the Secretary of State, and that information is passed along to the county clerk's office and then to us. So it's not an immediate process. We can help people register to vote right then and there. But it's just a little bit of a simpler process if they've already gone through that voter registration in advance. And if they're registered to vote and they're on our voter log, then we would be able to get that issued to them.
So a lot of residents in those two communities that we've mentioned struggle to do the voter registration because they need proof of where they live, which is oftentimes hard to get because they don't have lease agreements. They call it something else, right? But it's not a lease agreement. You can't get mail to your place, so you can't prove that you live there. Most of them don't have insurance policies. So it's very hard for those residents to prove that they live there and thus register to vote at the DMV, which is where I believe most people register to vote. So what would those people in those communities be able to show or provide?
So they would need to go through the voter registration process, which is the same for a mail ballot election as it is for an in-person election. There's a list of acceptable forms of identification and proof of address that would satisfy that. I don't know all of them off of the top of my head. I've performed elections primarily in the city of Minneapolis and Minnesota, but we did a lot of same-day voter registration for college students and students in like different housing situations. So there are options for that. I'm not as familiar off the top of my head of what all of the options look like here.
Totally understand that. I guess an ask would be to become familiar, become like intimately familiar, because that I believe will be a conversation I personally would like to have later down on the road. And I think is very important for our town, especially as the mayor was mentioning with the unique demographics that we have.
That's like a one pager that the Secretary of State puts out. They've got a really good graphic about that. It would be in all of the handouts that we keep at the desk, but also something we could pass along to you folks as well.
Thank you very much.
And either put on our website or create a link.
Yes.
I think it'd be really nice if we could try to work with the administrative aspects of those communities and see if we can get that information out to those residents.
Sooner rather than later.
Are there other questions? Now that we've digressed to the whole voter process,
Which means now we know what we're voting for.
understand. Again, I'll go back as I get old, my memory fails me. Have we had a motion yet? No. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve resolution 2025-39, authorizing the conduct of a mail ballot election for the town of Keystone's regular municipal election on April 7th, 2026.
I'll second.
We moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving resolution 2025-39, please raise your hands. Opposed? Resolution is to carry. All right, the last item of administrative work is resolution 2025-45, a resolution of the town council of the town of Keystone, Colorado, canceling the December 23rd town council meeting. Mr. Town Manager?
23rd meeting is 2 days before Christmas, obviously. One of our busiest weeks in the town of Keystone. Staff feels there's no pressing issues that need to be brought to the council. That can't wait until our first January meeting. And this just allows people to plan their holidays without trying to plan a day in the middle of it to do a meeting.
Does anyone have any questions of the town manager? Then may I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2025-45, resolution of the town of Keystone, Colorado, canceling the meeting on December 23, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of resolution 2025-45, please raise your hands. Opposed? Motion is carried. Mr. Town Manager, are there any planning matters?
No planning matters that you're not aware of. We will be doing the comp plan in January, bringing it to the council after the planning commission has one last shot at it.
All right.
Mr.
Now,
Mayor, I'm not sure if this comment would be appropriate during planning matters or other matters. But I believe as we look at our comp plan and strategic plan, it might be beneficial to try to do a joint meeting with the P and Z. Right now, what I view as happening is we're operating in two different segments without really having a time to talk to that board and understand their perspective. And the middle person is SE group, which is important, but I believe it's also important to have front line, if you will, and that planning commission, at least maybe have a joint session or have the opportunity to ask for a report from them or something. This quite frankly stems from feedback from at least one of the planning commission members that they felt some of the SE group work was not necessarily up to par or that. So I'd like to have a time when we could, on the record, have a discussion about the process and how they feel it's been going.
well, Mr. Town Manager, you respond to that?
Yeah, I wish our community development director would be here. There's a reason it's siloed between the council and the planning and zoning commission. First is statutorily, the planning and zoning commission has to review this and give a recommendation to the town council. And this kind of goes back to some of our workshop discussion. When we have semi-independent boards, advisory committees, groups like that, it is very important for you as a town council to hear their unfiltered views rather than to in some way influence what they may say to you. If you truly want to do a joint meeting, you're more than welcome to, but I think it's really important that you get their point of view and then you create your own point of view. We're not trying to form a consensus with the planning commission and the council. It's the council's, you operate in separate silos statutorily on things like comp plans and master plans. The planning commission is more than welcome to and encouraged to give reports if they have concerns about this. But once again, we're not even done. No one has seen the final version of this yet. Right now, staff is heavily editing much of it with SE Group. This is generally the way, this is a proven way of making sure that the community's views are best represented in the comp plan.
Couldn't agree more with your perspective of needing an unimpacted view from them. It feels like that, at least to me, that we're pretty far along the process. And I don't feel like we've had a report or a review or anything to that regard from the planning commission. Is there a typical progress check? Is there a way to ask for their perspective? I by no means think that we should impact their decision, but quite frankly, besides one-off conversations at Coffee with Council or other events in town, I don't know what their perspective is. And the only person who I have a perspective from is the SE Group.
Well, as I said, we are still working with a very incomplete document. And the planning commission will see the first draft of a complete document in their first January meeting. It might take them 2 meetings to go over it all. So there's really nothing to have a perspective on yet. At this point, it's actually staff is still working on this at this point before we present what staff feels is an adequate document to the planning and zoning and then to the town council. You will definitely get a report when they do their final recommendation or their final, I believe it's actually an approval that is confirmed by the council. You will definitely get a report and we will include pro and con statements by the Planning and Zoning Board as they put this together. You will be informed of what their positions were, what their concerns were, and issues like that. But at this point, there is a lot of wordsmithing and editing being done by our staff right now.
I won't jump the gun. I just think that it's something to keep front of mind, I guess, but.
I think it's going to be very important to get a very good and thorough report from planning and zoning.
Yep.
As it comes into us. And again, I appreciate the town manager's comments about what we really want is their recommendation and their advice. If we take the close to finished product in for consideration of whether to approve or not. Any other comments on planning and zoning? All right, report of town manager and staff. And I'd like to point out, Mr. Town Manager, that the chief is here. So if you, I don't know if he's wanting to go home sometime this evening, but I'd like to make a recommendation that perhaps he be allowed to give a report from the police department first.
Hey, Maddie, let me know about that. So Chief, have at it.
He said yes, but I didn't understand what he said.
Did you say it was okay?
Yes, please, Chief, let us hear what you have to say.
Mayor and Town Council, thank you. Still early in the night for me, so I'm sure everybody else wants to go, so I'll make this short. I did actually request some time. I did not confer with the town manager in his absence, however, did confer some of the earlier comments in work session from Sam Light and Sursa, just really good timing. Council members attended coffee with council, information got exchanged. Concerns came out of that regarding a complaint. I really appreciate how the information flowed from the acting town manager, obviously in the town manager's absence, addressing some issues. One of the bigger issues that came of that, which I'm very happy to talk about some progress as early as this afternoon. We have been working through with the Silverthorne Municipal Court, obviously for inclusion of Keystone into that. Lots of work has gone into that. Testing is well under the way that, contrary to what some of those comments are, we do have tickets in place. We are anticipating being able to issue those tickets in the 1st of January. Clearly, I think that has drove some of those comments early on. Working through the complaint portion of that, just so you know, from a police department standpoint per policy, like we investigate all complaints. So that has been addressed, but obviously I think the elephant in the room of that is like, why don't we have this yet? If you've ever got to work with a build team with 3 IT departments in 3 different municipal governments, it's pretty challenging. Thank you to the town attorney and the other 2 town attorneys and all the people that have made that happen to that. The IT portion of that is a big lift. So we are anticipating being able to have that on the 1st of January. So I just wanted to note that clearly with the timing of thank you for allowing me to speak and take any questions from anybody.
Any questions?
I clearly missed something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought maybe you were the one. What, I don't know what you're talking about. Should we?
Oh, go ahead, Chief.
Okay, very brief background maybe.
So a little context. Coffee of the council, obviously there's council members, there's citizens. There was a concern that came up that we weren't able to issue tickets into the municipal court yet.
And that was, I believe, Council Member Martin Sullivan sent an email out and it went to all council members that explained what happened to that coffee with council. Am I correct? It went to all council members?
No.
I don't know if it went to all, but I can explain at the coffee with council meeting, so. Unless you want me to tell, since I was there, unless you want me to.
The context of the complaint, and we don't really openly talk about complaints of who's making complaints and whatnot. The complainant was addressed, but one of the key components of that was that specific citizen's concern that we were not able to issue citations. In fact, I think it was, we don't even have citations. That's not accurate. We do. And clearly we're well into this process. And I thought it was important, from just a public standpoint of that, of yes, that is in fact true. We have not been doing that because we're still working on the back end of how tickets get processed, what that looks like. So I thought it was important to make sure that we're on the same page, that will actually start happening. We're anticipating the 1st of January.
I'm sorry, and I might have misheard you. Did you say we haven't been issuing tickets because the back end isn't figured out, or we have been issuing tickets?
We haven't been issuing Keystone specific tickets into municipal court because the process was not set up.
Okay.
However, to that point, we have been issuing many tickets because we have the ability to issue state tickets. Because one of the comments that got, like, we haven't been issuing citations on Highway 6. That is not accurate. We've issued numerous citations. So that was just setting the record straight of kind of what's what of that. I think there was some confusion about what that looks like and making sure that we're all on the same page moving into January.
And currently with a state ticket, that would get referred to the 5th Judicial District. Is that correct?
Factual.
And then they would determine if they would like to expend the time and resources to prosecute a speeding ticket.
Yeah, very similar processes. They get issued a citation. There's a court date. In fact, I think you and I have actually gone through tickets and what it looks like for that process of that. You get issued a court date if you choose to show up. One of the big parts of the back end of that, if you choose not to do that, there's a penalty. If it's a penalty assessment, right? There's a fine that's assessed to that. Dealing with the back end of, like, how do you pay that ticket? After you pay that ticket, what does it look like as far as process? Like, where does it go? Who collects? And that's really proven to be kind of a hard part of the process, capturing that. So.
Gotcha. And another question for you. Thank you for explaining that. That makes a lot more sense now. So one of the things I remember, and a gentleman came and gave a very emotional public comment about an animal attack, right? And we were in the process of passing code and ordinances related to that, right? Is there anything you view that we have not actioned or that you don't have clarification on, right? I'm thinking speed limits, I'm thinking noise, nuisance, other things like that, right? That you might get a call about, right? My neighbor's setting off fireworks in the backyard, but we haven't, like, we as a council haven't done anything to make that illegal or give you the authority to give tickets. Is there anything we've missed that you think is a red flag we need to be aware of?
No. My initial reaction that would be no. I think the ordinance and stuff that have been passed, I think are very appropriate. I think that the amount of work that has gotten done in a very short period of time is very admirable. Great question, because some of the specific ordinances, obviously have what came out of Coffee and Council is it was actually a dog complaint, right? So the municipal ordinance actually has something in that ordinance that is very applicable to that complaint, which helps it because it's stringent. When you look at it from the state perspective, that specific call, you would have gone to a very specific statute, doesn't necessarily deal with that. Your ordinance does. So as our officers have been reviewing the ordinances, I think that there is stuff that has been written into that is very beneficial, and it has a finite scope more to the town and the applicability of, instead of being a broad state statute, which may or may not have the right elements, that specific one being the animal one, which is a big issue in Keystone. dogs on leash, vicious dogs, dogs in cars, stuff like that, which I know got addressed in your ordinance, is a little more, it's just not as finite at the state level. So from time to time, this council will have discussions about ordinance that they want to see, or, we take that input from our officers of, what's working, what's not working, what's enforceable, what's not. That's going to be a moving target as long as you have time. So I would say at this point, because part of this process of getting in the court is actually entering all the ordinances and what that looks like on the records management system of that. And it's a never ending process depending on what your appetite is for adding ordinances and not. So the other thing that I would point out is in the very near future, we're going to a new records management system, which is a very, very large process. But at the end of the day, I think it will be better for the citizens, the officers, tracking, record keeping, workflow and efficiencies of that. But we will actually start talking about that hopefully a year from now. But, the initial part of that, and that's really hard when you're working with 3 IT people of a company that wasn't awarded the next contract of that, trying to get them to do stuff has been very challenging. But there will be improvement in that in the next year, which, as new ordinances get passed and what that looks like and what your appetite is for that, the ability to upload and change that is simple.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Chief, if I could just ask, so changing the back end, as you said, on that citation process, coming out in January, is that going to enable you in any way, or the policing that you do? Are we going to be able to see outcomes from that? Is that going to make a difference to us or to people transiting through Keystone? The fact that you're not able to, or there wasn't a process for it to go through that. So,
the
we're going to have that.
majority of things, it will change to some degree. It gives us the ability to write things in a municipal court, which is in Silverthorne. So there is, if you have a court date, it's the difference of going to Silverthorne or to Breckenridge.
Okay.
So that's a positive. The other part is, and a big part is, when you write in a municipal court and if there's fines and fees associated with that, then the revenue actually comes back to the town. That is also a piece, but I've been very honest that don't base your budget or any of your revenue projections on citations. You laugh, but there are municipalities that have done that in the past. We are not here as a revenue generating source by citations. We are solely here to enforce the law and get the behavior change that we want, especially on Highway 6. And that conversation has been going on since I got here. So did that answer your question specifically, or is it broader?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I'm still trying to, once again, locally trying to fix some things on Highway 6 with the ordinances that we have, right? We understand CDOT and, structurally changing things and making, so I was just kind of curious if this gave you some kind of additional policing tool to maybe help stop with some of the issues that we have on Highway 6, or if it doesn't really make a difference, it's just going to a different place.
I just want to make sure that I'm answering your question specifically. So there are enforcement tools at our disposal now. However, I do think that, being able to write in the municipal court, especially with the prosecutor and the judge that are in place, that you guys have voted in to provide service to the town, I do think that it's more intimate, and you might see greater levels of behavior change because, depending on what the consequence is, if it's just a penalty assessment, it's just a fine, but, there is a certain speed on our citation that you get to go see the judge personally. And clearly high speeds on Highway 6 between the 3 towns in the corridor is a very high priority. So I would like to think that there actually be more of an impact. with those local tickets. Like I said, if you're over certain limits, that's actually summons in to see the judge. So,
Am I correct that the judge has taken a very hard line on excessive speeds in the jurisdictions?
yes. There's a lot going on as far, the current judge, obviously, with speeding specific and high speeds being a priority, he does go to great lengths to get his point across. There has been discussion about certain other tools at his discretion, whether it be driving school or jail time, which a lot of people don't want to talk about. And there's a lot that goes in that. That discussion is going to continue to grow. Some of the stuff that we haven't really discussed at the council level that, some municipalities are dealing with, is stationary radar cameras and what that looks like. I anticipate us having a discussion along those lines in the very near future of what that looks like to this town specifically. So there are other towns that are looking at that, that are actually in our corridor. So I think as we go into the future, trying to develop strategies, not only with these two towns being Dillon and Keystone, but in, Silverthorne has already headed down that direction as well, and trying to slow people down.
Any other questions? Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received a public, and you might not have been on this, we received a public comment about the noise that trucks make coming down the hill with the Jake brakes. And just in general, commercial vehicles, I think, are a constant point of note, I think, with a lot of people in the community, whether it's noise, chains, whatever, right? Speed, obviously the big one.
The black truck at 415.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just didn't get the reference. I'm sorry. But has there been any targeted commercial vehicle enforcement efforts? Or is there any plans for the potential for that?
Yes, there will be high visibility traffic days.
Okay.
I would like to thank our partners at Colorado State Patrol, because if you're paying attention, their CMV people have been in Keystone quite frequently lately. Dealing with the Jake brake and the noise, we are very well aware of some of those early morning complaints, and dealing with that and going through, is the truck just loud? Does it have a muffler? Going through. So the commercial inspection piece of that is invaluable. And I would tip my hats to those guys that have been here.
Are your officers able to do that? Like a truck flies by and they're super loud, right? Are they able to turn on the lights and pull them over? Or do they have to do a commercial vehicle inspection? And are your officers able to do that, or would it need to be the CSP?
If it is blatant, that there is obviously no engine muffler and falls within the parameter of what the ordinance is, because Dillon has one too.
Sure.
They absolutely can stop someone for that. However, it is really great having people on site that can do the entire commercial vehicle inspection, because our officers would be writing specifically based on that ordinance, as opposed to the plethora of things that those guys go through. And if you've never seen one of their inspectors go through one of those, they are extremely skilled and professional in how they do that. So two different scopes in reality.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember
Quickly,
Kerr?
related to that, I have seen this, and I wasn't sure whether I was noticing it because of my interest or whether it was more. So is this a new initiative, or have they changed their timeline, or am I excited and then there'll be a month I don't see them? How does that
It very well could be. I mean, it's based on priorities and staffing.
Okay.
Clearly getting them on Highway 6, like they've been doing that for many, many years. And in fact, Dillon actually used to do it quite frequently as a police department. And they made it a priority, like they would pull their entire office out and do those checkpoints. from a staffing perspective and a professional inspector piece of that, like we can't do that. So there might be more months that you might see them more.
Okay.
If they have staffing available, I do believe that some of their positions are actually grant funded as well. However, we have good working relationships with them. You know, the days that we do high visibility traffic, we are going to request them.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
If they can oblige, that would be great. But clearly in the wintertime with just staffing levels and what's going on in the I-70 corridor, obviously, with Loveland, it's kind of interesting because when Loveland closes, all hazmat goes through the tunnel. So it changes the traffic patterns.
Yeah.
So.
Good, thank you. So it does have something to do with your relationship with them. A lot to do with that.
Yes, we try and play well with everyone. Like we don't even touch I-70. However, we still, if they need officers for chain law or, you know, unfortunately you see our cars on I-70 a lot because if there's a lot going on and we're the closest, we go.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Permit.
Do your officers have and use sound meters for the purposes of truck noise enforcement?
We have not for the trucks. We have for certain noise complaints.
Is that something you would consider?
I think we consider any tools that's viable. You know, we haven't, and in the context of our officers' kind of daily routines of that, we haven't added that piece into the car because there's a lot of other things. But we would consider any tool that's beneficial.
What would that look like? I mean, with a radar or LiDAR, whatever it's technically called, right? An officer can sit there and get their reading. Does an officer sit there with the megaphone out the window to get the reading for the noise, or what does that look like?
It could look like that. You know, you have certain units that you can build in your cars. They're expensive. You know, you can have the handheld equipment if that's what you're solely focusing on. But the majority of times, you know, you have commercial vehicles that are speeding. You know, you may not hear the noise until they're right upon you. You know, and if you're writing speed citations, like you have to have, you know, visual observation. There's space built into that and techniques behind that, but, you know, we can definitely look into that.
I guess my question relates to if it's known that there's a loud truck at a certain time, and one of your officers was in place to check on that, might it be a good tool for them to? The ordinance is fairly specifically written in compliance with like both state and EPA limits. Noise must not be over X at X distance from the center line. Couldn't they then go like, it's over?
Good. Yeah, we definitely could. We'll look into that and I'll get back to you.
Any other questions?
I just want to comment. I think like I've heard at least from a half a dozen people about this noise. So it's like, it's definitely an important thing.
Yeah. The number one issue is, I believe that I've heard, is truck speeding on US 6. The number two issue I've heard is noise, jake brakes from trucks on US 6. All right, I think we've just hijacked the town manager's report. The intent of this was to address the one issue. Can I ask you to defer your questions and we'll get the chief in for a work session for a complete run through? Either that or we could continue to stay and maybe get to a position where the chief gets sleepy.
He won't, and that's at your discretion.
Sounds like a dare.
Thank you for answering all of our questions.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Town Manager, I apologize for doing that to you. So could you now please continue with your report?
No, that's quite all right. That was important discussion. I'm going to keep my report very short. Maddie's going to weigh in on it a little bit since she's been in the office this past week and I haven't. I do want to talk a little bit about Razor Drive and Tennis Club Road. We've been working on engineered plans for a sidewalk from Razor Drive to the bus stop. We've been working closely with CDOT on that. Sounds like CDOT is planning on doing their entire, as we call, the Band-Aid on Razor Drive in 2027 and 2028. This sidewalk could be included in that. We would have a share that we have to contribute anyways. I'm still for moving forward with this sidewalk this coming year, and we'll use that as our contribution to the entire Razor Drive project. We've also got engineering going to deal with the drainage problems down at Tennis Club Road and Highway 6. So those projects are both moving forward. We should have some good solid estimates and prices for you in the beginning of 2026. I'm gonna pass it on to Maddie and let her give kind of our in-house reports from the rest of the staff quickly.
Just before you give a report, I just want to point out, John, I'm not sure where your desk is today. I think that Maddie's currently enjoying that corner office though. With that.
My desk,
Madam
I'm
Clerk?
looking over at Luau and at Wales, so I'm quite okay with that.
Feel bad.
Go ahead.
All right, so for community development, we already covered an update of where we're at with the comprehensive plan. They've also got 4 active current planning cases that will be coming up in the future. For finance, Heike has launched Cassell this month, and that implementation has happened and the finance processes have moved in-house. Additionally, this was in some of the reports about that transition to Cassell, but just she wanted to note that the accounts payable review will be happening at each council meeting moving forward instead of just the second meeting of the month. From the clerk's office, we have got the How to Run 101 event coming up on Thursday, and that's in coordination with the municipal clerks from the other municipalities in Summit County. That will be hosted at Keystone Town Hall. It will not be a virtual meeting, but we will record the meeting and post that afterwards. It's primarily just an opportunity for folks to know the logistics of what they need to get for their nominating petitions and when that process opens up and when the deadlines are.
One comment for anyone on council who is considering, who has not been through an election, or even if you have, I would recommend that session for you. And then the other piece is I want to commend the clerk's office for the advertisement of that in the email traffic that you've sent out, as well as it's the first thing that hits you in the face on the website today.
Thank you. The other thing that happened is we launched the new website. We've gotten positive feedback so far. Folks are using the contact form, and it seems like we're getting some feedback, good and bad, about it, but primarily good. There is one small issue with the filtering right now for the meeting dates, and that should be addressed by the middle of the day tomorrow. And then for Public Works, we've got the plow contract signed, and that is everything we've got going on for an update this week.
Any questions? All right, report of mayor and council. Does anyone have a report they'd like to give?
Have 2. Hold down. The Blueprint stakeholder meeting, and I'll ask you, Mayor, to weigh in as you see necessary or wherever missed. Just you don't remember, you weren't invited because it was the Blueprint destination consultant had John reach out to quote stakeholders, and that meant business managers or owners and nonprofits and key organizations involved with tourism in Keystone. We had a pretty good show turnout, not a lot of businesses. So we'll have to work on that. But the point of this, it was about five-hour meeting to develop the intent that these folks would recommend for going forward in tourism. And the bottom lines are to advance off-peak season tourism, recognizing there's no interest in pushing peak season, champion tourism workforce, encourage responsible and respectful tourism, and promote local businesses and experiences. So this small team from Colorado Tourism Office ran this workshop, took recommendations, pulsed the stakeholders for how they feel about certain ideas. And then the consultant is going to turn that into a report for us to decide whether what we want to do with it. And then once that's done, we get 100 hours of consulting. I know I've talked to you about this before, but I was afraid we were already using this consulting time. We have not. Once he recommends, here's our strategy, he's to stay with us for the first steps of this. So, Mayor, what did I miss? Anything?
No, you covered it well. The other comment is, again, this was the result of a grant that we received from the State Tourism Office. We had representation from the State Tourism Office here, as well as the consultant. We had representation from at least the major players in tourism in Keystone. And the grant that we received gave us, provided us this session that was held, as well as the 100 hours of consulting work that will be directly supporting the marketing committee. So it was positive, more to come. I think all the results are going to be flowed through the marketing committee on the way back to council.
Yes.
As they go forward. But it was a very interesting process. Many of the same themes that we heard here, we've heard in the, as the comp plan has been developed, and also in the RTA stuff as well. So we're seeing a lot of validation of what was determined in those public sessions and the surveys. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Sort of eases our mind that we're not missing the boat. Now we just get to do it.
Number two.
Number two is a report from the CML Council, Policy Committee, sorry. And this is relevant based on the SURSA discussion today. So John and I represent you and the town at the Policy Committee. The entire purpose is to give CML feedback as to their lobbying efforts. So I want you to know that when there is a new issue about which this council has not deliberated, about which our position would be unclear, I think John would agree with me, we will take it back to you before we make a vote. We are one of like 70 or so who vote, but nevertheless, we want to represent the council and the town. Two interesting issues are related to the things that are most of interest to us, and that is unfunded state management, unfunded state mandates and state overreach. So you remember us discussing last year the bill known as Yes in God's Backyard. That was to give the churches and schools abilities that no others have. This year, it's back. It passed last year, so it's back under a new name. It's called HOME. I have no idea what that stands for, but it does not include churches now. So if you are a school and you own property, under this bill, you would be able to develop this property with just an administrative okay from the, I don't know if it's from the state or the locality, without having to meet local zoning laws. CML will oppose, debate will be contentious, and there is concern that the governor will signal his support. On the horizon, and not a real clear bill yet, but it will develop, supported by a senior Dem representative with governor's interest, is another affordable housing move. And that is to allow residential lot splitting as a use by right. If you want to, you can do it.
Wow.
Point of interest, Wheat Ridge does allow this. So as this discussion takes place, there will be a track record to review. But CML expects to oppose what is seen as state overreach. They haven't seen the bill yet. So that's two things to track when you're reading the newspaper. Thank you. Next. That's it.
All right. Others? You have something?
Yes, so actually just today, our town clerk forwarded a public comment to us all that I think is worth bringing up and discussing
Yes.
from a constituent employee of our community about the Summit County school system. Brief background is there's 6 elementary schools in the county, and the school board has a planning group that is executing a planning process and survey that is considering, amongst other things, two rather critical topics that may be very controversial or at least of great interest to our community. One of them is bringing 5th graders into the middle school, which is currently 6th through 8th grade. And the other is closing at least one of the 6 elementary schools in the county and consolidating those students into other elementary schools. Some of these are relatively close geographically, such as Upper Blue, which is on the north end of Silverthorne, and Rec Elementary. Others are more radical, such as closing Summit Cove Elementary School and putting all of the students from Montezuma, Keystone, Summit Cove, Summerwood, over to Frisco, Silverthorne, or Dillon Elementary Schools, dividing the student populations into those other communities. I think it's worth bringing this to the attention of our constituents. There's a survey out there. I would have had no idea this was going on if the constituents had brought it forth. I don't know how it's being communicated or if the communication's limited to like current enrollment, but the stakeholders involved in this, I think, are well beyond the current distribution list, as evidenced by the number of community leaders sitting here who were surprised to hear about the process through that venue of being informed. So that's all I want to do, is bring this to everyone's attention so that we can get this out to our constituents, make sure that they're having their voices heard in that survey. And I would also suggest that this council may wish to discuss offering an opinion or position about these potential moves by the school district.
Just a clarification, Councilmember Parmet. You said Upper Blue Elementary School in Silverthorne was being considered to close?
Upper Blue.
And
Breckenridge.
In Breckenridge.
There's
Okay.
elementary and upper.
Understood, but I was,
if I misspoke, I'm sorry.
no, you're good. I was just making sure I was understanding which elementary school we were talking about. So we're talking about Upper Blue in Breckenridge.
Well, there's 2 elementary schools.
Understood.
Yeah,
Understood.
those were one pot. There's actually 4 contingencies that are presented. That
We're
is
talking about consolidating those for years.
right. So that's one that they're proposing. The other is sending Frisco students, which would also include Copper Mountain, to Upper Blue and Breckenridge and to Summit Cove. I guess there's only 3 contingencies. The third one is closing Summit Cove.
Thank you.
This was part of the vote last year, that when the school board was looking for large amounts of money so that they could close and or modify another school. I do not recall Summit Cove being on the list of one of the schools that was in bad repair, which is what they're, so now they have gone beyond the bad repair problem in order to redistribute
Yeah,
children.
the challenge that they have is a declining population. And we have more capacity in the schools that we need, and the funding, with the funding, as the population declines, state funding also declines. So as a result, they are seeing a declining budget and are trying to deal with that declining budget. I was aware, as some of you have mentioned, it's been discussed for a while. I wasn't aware that they had started a survey on that yet. And they're in the very preliminary stages, as the last discussions I've had with the school board folks, of the consideration of the study. I would agree with Councilmember Parmet that I would ask staff to find out some more information of exactly where are they in the process and when would be the appropriate time for us as a council to evaluate whether we should take a position on that.
I would like to, counter is the wrong word, but I would almost ask that we determine a position now, given that we are canceling the meeting, on the 23rd of December. What I'm trying to get at
It's
is,
gonna happen in the next month.
how sure are you of that?
I'm very, very sure.
If
Okay.
the survey is open currently, it seems unlikely they would act.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking a decision process, probably 12 to 18 months out on a decision on closure. But they're doing the preliminary studies right now to give a look at what the options are.
Here's something worth
But,
considering.
but I think we do need to get this information out to the community to get them to weigh in on the surveys. Sorry, Karen.
I agree with you. Sorry, I didn't know you were going to keep going. I apologize. But what is worth considering is that an original concept was to close the Breckenridge School. There was huge pushback, which is why they're now looking at other alternatives.
That closure is still there.
My point being, though, if they're looking at where the children are no longer living and those areas where there are more children, I think the possibility of Breckenridge pushback, which is pretty political group, may hurt our folks if we are not equally clear about our priorities.
I think when you look at the survey, which I encourage you all to open that link, you don't have to fill it out if you don't want to, although I encourage you to fill it out as a stakeholder in the community. They put forth why they're asking these questions and the information they're trying to seek from the people filling out the survey. They explain their rationale for their need to close or consolidate schools. And I agree that we should zealously promote the interests of our constituents and our extended community. So to the mayor's point, I took the opportunity to pass the information that Maddie sent us from our constituent on to Montezuma, and Mayor Leslie was grateful to receive that because they also had not seen the survey.
So again, I'd like staff to investigate. I think staff needs to investigate where are they in the process and where are they for timelines. There's nothing imminent.
Okay.
So
I didn't want it to be a Forest Service decision that 2 days from now, all of a sudden the bulldozers are coming.
they're in the preliminary stages, and this is all driven by the turn down of the ballot initiative, and they're trying to get and the declining funding that they're seeing. And it's huge budget hit to them that's coming. And like you said, there are a lot of options being floated around. I think they're just trying to coalesce on what makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
They lay out what level of construction would be needed for each of the consolidation plans. I think as we look at the interests of our community, geographic proximity for parents to schools is absolutely important, as is avoidance of community dilution, like spreading out students to 3 different schools. It doesn't promote community cohesion. Would be just the concerns off the top of my head.
it creates a tremendous busing problem.
Yeah, and that's a negative impact on parents, on students who are spending their time on the bus instead of all the other things they could do with their time. I have one other thing if we're done with this issue. Since Council Member Hagenow mentioned the Forest Service, I did receive some updates. The acting director has taken a position in Alaska. It's not with this ranger district, and they have selected somebody new permanent district ranger, which will be announced any day now.
All right. Anything else from council? Councilmember Hagenow.
Thank you. STR code violations.
Remind me,
What's this?
SCR?
Are we in other matters?
Are we not in other matters?
Maybe.
I thought
We're
we were-
still in a report of mayor and council.
SCR mean.
Never mind. Never mind.
Any other report of mayor and council? All right, I will give one. And I have a couple of items. Dylan has asked the other towns, and this goes back to something that Councilmember Kerr expressed, and is to, if they'd be interested in jointly forming a nonprofit grant board to allocate nonprofit the nonprofit dollars. I mean, so again, the question is that something we might be interested in exploring with them or not? As we are in the formative stage of developing. So any thoughts?
Premature,
Yeah,
top of my mind, without knowing what they're thinking about. We are already involved in a sense, in a joint grant program through PERC, this new arrangement that the manager has expressed to us. And I think what we were looking for here is an opportunity to single out grants that would benefit our community specifically, which is not to say that that they wouldn't have good ideas, but I think, I felt that was our objective. I may not be speaking for all of you.
I think what the point was, as they've gone through, done this for years, is they will have a similar amount of money that we will. I think we have, what, $35,000 in the budget for grants, not counting the nicotine tax dollars. And they're getting 40 or more applications from all over the county.
Oh.
And they're having to, and all the towns have the same issue,
Yeah.
by the way. They get that similar number of grants. And they were saying, would it make more sense to coordinate this a little bit more? Yes, you still focus on your community, but you might be able to be, in some of these grants, they might be able to, these guys may be supporting multiple communities, and you could get more bang for your dollars that way.
But I thought that was the point of this new process that FERC was developing.
It's not FERC, it's.
You're right, Summit Foundation, my bad.
That only is for social welfare grants, not the other type of grants that we're considering. Total different type of grant.
If I may weigh in,
Yeah,
this is the first I've heard of this.
it was brought up at mayor council.
Oh,
Mayor
okay.
manager.
Okay. I think we're going to be having discussions about our grant program in January or February anyways. Be a very good time to delve into this. Let us get some more information of what exactly Dylan is thinking before we start to make any decisions on this.
Yeah, and I guess my recommendation would be to task the town staff to go work with the Dillon staff and figure out what they're really looking at and at least have an idea of what it would look like. Like Councilmember Kerr, I'm a little skeptical of it, but I'd like to understand what it would mean to us.
And like what I recommended last month, it depends on what their criteria is. If these are not social welfare programs, what are they? How, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe we will learn some good ideas from them. That would be great.
All right, but I just wanted to let you know that was thrown out there. And I said, yep, I'll bring it up. There's the tour of Kindred tomorrow for those of you who want to go, 11 o'clock at the Kindred Sales Center. And there will be a lunch available afterwards. There's an HOA meeting on Zoom with Starfire on this weekend at 9 a.m. I plan to be there if anyone else would like to be there as well.
You said this weekend.
This weekend, the 13th.
Which date? Oh, the
Saturday.
13th. Okay.
Saturday the 13th at 9 a.m. So if anyone would like to, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure you're involved. And I would like to, we had this discussion of the one of the items brought up, the coffee with council. And the chief didn't cover all of the aspects of that. It was basically a barking dog in a car in a condo association, potential STR renter involved with the ownership of the car. It was a violation of HE. I did a little investigation. It was a violation of HOA rules. The HOA does not allow dogs, and they also do not allow dogs in cars for the very specific reason that they didn't want renters or even owners coming in and leaving the dogs barking in cars. The dogs were barking. There was a concern of the welfare of the dog, and there was a concern of the noise. And that's the police did respond, it sounds like appropriately. The HOA did actually respond as well and actually called the police as well in the process. And the owner, I believe, called the police as well. The owner expressed skepticism and didn't want to report it via the HOA hotline since it was an STR issue. That may have been the quickest way to actually get this resolved. The HOA hotline, because she was concerned that she wanted to only be able to report it anonymously. And she was under the impression that she could not. And that's incorrect. They can report a STR violation anonymously. They'll be asked for their name. They can choose to not provide that name. And then the complaint will be taken by the hotline. And the clerk has also informed me that that will also, capability will exist as we go to the new AI-based hotline, I think.
How is that a violation of STR code, a dog in your car?
It's the noise.
Okay.
It's the barking dog.
Okay, so it's the noise created by the dog.
The noise created by the dog, not the dog in the car. If it was a dog in the car, that'd be a pure law enforcement animal control issue and a potential HOA issue. But it was the noise that the STR customer was creating is how it would get into the STR piece, which would then allow us to get involved. We're not, and we would not be enforcing HOA rules because we could care less whether a dog's, well, we care, but we would not be enforcing HOA rules about dogs and cars. We'd be only enforcing, the town would only be concerned about the barking of any particular noise issue and in our animal control ordinance, and we'd be concerned and the noise and the animal welfare. So it sounds like the issue, it was appropriately addressed, but we do have an issue of that apparently we have residents that want to report anonymously and they don't think they can, and we need to allow them to do that. The concern I have with that is I really do want them to provide their name because that's the only way we can give them feedback of the resolution of their concern. If we don't have contact information for that person, we can't give them feedback.
I mean, one thing we could do, I filled out a comment, a positive comment actually about the TSA recently. And they asked at the end, would you like follow-up on this matter? And you can select yes or no. We could always look to add would you like to be contacted about this?
I think, correct me wrong, don't we respond to every complaint, give them a feedback?
Yes, if they provide that contact information where we can reach out to them via email or phone, we follow up with that. And that is consistent with the future process as well.
So that's what, so if they decide to be anonymous, they wouldn't get feedback. But I just wanted to give you the update, that that's what that issue is really about, and a little bit of investigation.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a quick question on that? So how was the STR link made that the hotline would have worked? Was it actually in a parking deck? So someone illegally parks.
So they were parked in a HOA spot, and they had a rental sticker, at least I'm told they had a rental sticker in the dash. So then you knew the unit, specific unit that was involved.
Oh, that's helpful, because I was just curious if it was a illegal parking, someone wanting to go skiing and left the dogs in One of them. Okay.
So a parking permit tied to an SDR helped solve an issue.
Absolutely.
Was there just the one person at the coffee? Do you know?
There was 6 people. Councilmember Sullivan and I were there. Typical topics that have already been addressed. I think the one positive thing that came out of there was, I would like to think, community education that, check the town website. Is this issue a town issue or is this an HOA issue? Is this a management company issue? So I think we tried to reinforce that, some of these topics that are being brought up are not really town specific, that are town awareness, but there are proper channels to go through and to research that there's a lot of committees being formed. Welcome to attend meetings, council meetings, work sessions, any of the trails committee, planning and zoning. So I think it was a good educational opportunity to say, a lot of these things that you're asking about, they're already being addressed and you can become more informed by getting involved. So
I feel like I'm going to start paying people to sign up for our information because when I ask them, they always have funny excuses. It's like, sign up. Nobody's going to bother you. You're not going to get spammed.
Any other reports?
Can I? Oh, not a report.
Are you ready for other matters?
Well, yes, it's another matter related to coffee with council. How's that?
Well, let's go to other matters and I'll recognize. No, you're the
That's
one who
fine.
tried to do it. All right.
I just was jumping the gun, I guess. STR code
Okay.
violations is something I wanted to bring up and not necessarily solve right here, but I just wanted to bring it up for consideration. When you call the hotline, it says specifically it is only for reporting STR code violations. I think a lot of times when we look at making decisions about STRs just in general, we try to get facts, figures, numerics, citizen comments, all this kind of thing. Data, right? It boils down to using data to make decisions about our community. Currently, I believe the hotline is really restrictive in being able to get feedback on STRs. And I'm going to use an example from my road, right? There's an STR at the end of the road. About a week and a half ago, there was a renter there that I think was in NASCAR and just drove like a bat out of hell on the road. And that is technically not an STR code violation, right? But I think it's important to get those numerics and data on the impact that STRs can have on communities, right? Whether that's my road, whether that's an HOA building, whether that's Keystone as a whole. And currently, I truthfully don't believe that there's a good way to do that. And I mean, the guidance I was given was call the police about that, right? And sure, that's the guidance now, but I think we should try to look at if there's a way that we could try to get data and make decisions on the impact STRs have, positive or negative, in our communities. And restricting that hotline to only technical code violations, I think is a disservice to us. And also when we look at several vocal members of our community point to the lack of use of the hotline, right? And I think we'd rather get more reports, right? We'd rather get more reports and be able to filter that down and take action on the ones that are violations rather than restrict it right off the bat. Again, bringing it up here for discussion.
Working the new AI-based SDR system. What are your thoughts?
So first, I don't think that's practical for the current system with the phone operators because they just don't have the capacity for someone in a call center in North Carolina to get that granular about understanding what to do. That hotline is very specific and having people reach out to the responsible agent and enforcing that responsible agent component I do believe there is some room for the AI system. A big part of what I think will be the benefit of that is that people will have the opportunity to say, hey, this is what's happening. Is this something that's an STR violation? You know, is this something that's an HOA issue? Is this something that's a police issue? And directing people about that. And in addition to that, it is logging all of those conversations. So while all of those conversations won't initiate the responsible agent process, we will receive the log of every complaint that's submitted, and it's not restricted in the same way.
Why can't we
And
do that with?
If I may weigh in, John, our council member Hagenow, you were instructed to call the police because it sounded like it was a life safety issue. There was someone driving horribly dangerous in that neighborhood. Our STR hotline would not in any way have, this was a situation that had to be dealt with at this point immediately. It wasn't a matter of calling a responsible agent and giving them an hour to go out there and deal with someone who's already in a car, not at the house at the time. So that's why you were instructed to call the police on this issue. And I'd instruct people to call the police on this issue going forward. And what we're going to see a lot of our police issues in our reports, they're going to identify whether they're locals or visitors. And it's fairly safe to assume that most visitors are staying in an STR. Are they a short-time visitor? One way or the other, we could figure that out relatively easily too. I'm just really concerned that at this point, we make sure we get the STR hotline up and running well and doing it well, and then look to expanding in some way otherwise. It's, you know, are you sure that driver was from there? These are all questions that would have to be asked when we have someone complaining about someone who's not actually on property as a short-term renter.
I think it makes perfect sense that you refer life safety issues in the correct direction. The issue I think that Councilmember Hagenow is trying to press here is that we have then no way to track those issues that we are sure of that are related, that fall under the life safety and are proscribed from the phone greeting on the hotline. We have no way to create tracking and complaints about those type of issues.
And quite frankly, the impact that STRs have on the community, right? Like if there's 5 STRs in a neighborhood and there's 1,000 complaints about speedy drivers, Councilmember Parment once mentioned, like, you don't care what your neighbor thinks about you if you never see them again in the rest of your life. And that's what a lot of STR people are, is they're neighbors that you're never going to see again in the rest of your life. So they don't care if they drive like a bat out of heck in the neighborhood. Versus
we do have these police reports.
Yeah, but how does that get
that's okay. So like most guests act like decent human beings because they are decent human beings. You run into the problem that Councilmember Hagenow just presented, that some folks don't feel the imperative because they don't face consequence of facing their neighbors the next day because they'll never be back. That does become an issue that is worth tracking. Police reports do not capture that. We don't have granular data, and calls to dispatch would route to the address of the person making the call possibly, rather than the specific address. And are we actually tracking down to the unit number and referring back from police report data and cross-referencing that with our STR database? Because if we're not, that either is something that we would have to do or it's not the solution.
Can I bring this back to the agenda item that we are on? Is this something council would like to discuss at a future meeting?
I would like to
Where
hear.
staff can get the data and issues like that, can realize the impact of anonymous complaints too. There's a lot that you've brought up here that I think we cannot handle tonight, but is this something council would like staff to bring up at a future meeting?
My proposal, just to be clear, is not to workshop this tonight. I'm asking for how we can better track STR impacts on our community that technically might not be a code violation. So that's my ask, is to explore better how we can track those impacts, positive or negative.
Is that something that staff is in a position to do?
Well, we can put together, there's a, there's a whole laundry list of positive and negative impacts of STRs. This is not something for the end of the meeting discussion. So once again, is this something council would like us to research and see what we can bring up with some ideas for you?
And I was asking you the question, do you have the capacity, if council said we'd like you to do that with existing staff?
I think so. I mean, this is something we've been focused on for a while, is STRs and their impact.
Right. Now, I guess I'll turn to council. Would you like staff to do that? A thumbs up if you do.
Not sure what you're asking staff to do.
He's asking staff to-
John's request was simply to make the directions a little broader. So
No.
that we could track. What are you asking them for?
We're asking staff to look at ways, if there are ways to track these things.
Ways to track all the impacts of short-term rentals on our community is the
Right.
question I heard.
That's the question.
Is there a better way to capture the impact that is currently proscribed from being input into our SCR hotline?
And that's a subset of the whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
And I think the question is going to be, what do we want to do with that information? So if we think that we are going to change STRs or make some kind of decision, then we need information and data to make that educated decision. If we wanted to be able to tease out some things that we tell our constituents, I think that's a whole different ask. But I think if our objective is to get to a place where we make decisions on STRs, proscribing them or eliminating them or whatever, then we have to have something to make that decision on.
And that's, I'm a big data-driven decision maker, right? So I don't know what that decision could possibly be that we're discussing, but if we don't have data that I believe is valid, then yeah, okay. I digress.
But do we need to get data?
We need to get data to see we can, what
So if we
is,
think it's a
determined.
problem that we need to do something about, then we need to get data to.
We believe it's possible that there are issues that are missing, and that's why we get complaints that the STR hotline data seems low, because it may not be fully capturing impact. So it might be interesting to see how else we can get impact data. The intent is not to ban anything. If you want a hypothetical, if you had a repeat problem place that wasn't captured by hotline, it might be captured by the other data.
All right. I'm trying to frame something that staff could potentially work with. And that's why I said to look at potential options for tracking impacts of STRs. That may involve the hotline, it may involve something else. I don't want to constrain them.
Sure.
And we need to have associated with that the cost associated with implementing that type of a program. Everything can be tracked, it's just how much do you want to pay?
I would say, yes, I support that.
All right? I'm ambivalent at this point. So how many want staff to spend time on that now?
Not immediately right now, but in the
No,
future.
no, we're giving staff direction to come back to us. How many of them want to give staff that direction to come back? I have 3. How many of them do not?
It's not clear enough what decisions we would take.
Therefore, at this point, staff does not have that direction. It's 3-3. Proposal fails.
Well, there was no motion or
No,
proposal.
no, the proposal fails. We made a decision not to give staff that direction at this point. It takes a majority to give staff direction. I'd be more than happy to entertain it later.
Okay, yeah.
All right, but I just Do we want to, where do we want to spend staff time? Today,
I've said my piece. I don't need to argue it.
all right? So
When would you like to return to that?
that's your choice. You can bring it up at any time. I'm not going to set a date for returning on something we decided we didn't want to do today.
I mean, to Aaron's point, you said you'd like to see it in the future.
Sometime in the future, I don't know when. I don't know when we'd be in a position to support it. I don't know what information is going to be available or yet. I think it's premature, but if I set a date for the future, then we tacitly changed our vote to say, yes, we're going to go address it.
Would it be unreasonable to say by the next time we look at the STR process, kind of around this yearly cycle, so it's almost a year out?
Or before, yeah, if it becomes an issue.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
But I like more clarity.
Yeah. Councilmember Kerr.
It's light subject. So I'm excited about the 6 people who who participated in Coffee with Council. It is true, though, that our coffee mornings and brew nights have enjoyed uneven success. And yet, I think we signal something important to the community that we are doing it, whether they come or not. And 2, we learn a lot from those people who do come. What I've been trying to figure out, is there any reasonable modification we can make? And I think some people would rather have a purpose for going. Yes, it's lovely to go for coffee, but I wanted to propose that we think about, no big timetable here, that whoever the 2 council members are of the day could identify for the town clerk to include in the publicity. We're prepared to talk about these 2 topics and let them decide what they are, so they're not stuck doing something they don't want to talk about. We could just leave it up to any council members who are going to lead one of these to make that decision. But sometimes it's handier, it's better to know what you're going for. Oh, this is an opportunity to talk about the status of policing, or how's the new SDR hotline going? Whatever we feel we'd want to talk about for no more than 5 minutes, because it really is their time to chat with us. I put this out there, something to think about.
My concern with that is some people might not go to a coffee with council because they feel like their topic is not being.
I think that is a legitimate concern, and we would need to be clear that we'll spend 5 minutes on these 2 topics, and then anything you want to talk about.
These are 2 highlights and then everything else.
Anything you want to talk about, right?
What do you guys think?
I think it needs to be more structured because we keep getting the same topics.
There we go.
Same things brought up, whether it's brews with council or coffee with council.
I agree with Councilmember Martin, and
And
unfortunately.
it gets hijacked, the meeting gets hijacked because then we get off on a tangent that has nothing to do with the town's responsibility, control, authority. So I would say even half of that meeting needs to be a structured 2 or 3 topics, and then it's a 20, 30-minute Q&A, because like I say, I don't know, the ones I've been at, we just really get hijacked and we're repeating what we've already stated at the previous ones.
Sure, yeah.
Yes,
So
agreed.
why don't we try it out next few times? Okay. No loss. We don't want to stop giving Maddie ideas, topic ideas. Okay. Are you willing to do that? That one line? Thank you.
Council wants to do that? All right. All right. Any other matters? All right. In that case, it is now probably past 10.
9:50.
9:50. There's no other business. The meeting's adjourned. And will everyone please have a